Hi everyone, happy Friday and happy Bring a Prop to School Day. My prop today is Mr. Tumnus, my cat, and he is so excited to be here. I hope you're all doing really well. Today I'm actually filming this on Tuesday, but today after I film this video, I am going to go donate some blood to a company who they're trying to develop a test to see how soon they can detect COVID-19 in someone's blood. And so they need a bunch of samples to test on. So that's what I'm doing after this. Wish me luck. But today we are on our last day of Point of View, and we're focusing on why the author would have chosen a certain point of view in a fictional text. How would the story be different if they had chosen a different point of view instead, if someone else had been the narrator? By the end of today, you should be able to say, I can explain. Sorry, he's nuzzling the computer. By the end of today, you should be able to explain how events would be described differently from another point of view. Let's start by looking at this cover of the New Yorker. What do you see? I see a woman who's receiving a package. I see a man locking or unlocking a bookstore, and a delivery man delivering a package. Now, what can we infer based on the details that we identified? The man who's in blue that we said is probably locking or unlocking that bookstore, we can infer that he might own that bookstore because he's locking it or unlocking it. Not many people would have the keys. The woman might be receiving books, and I'm just making that inference because to me her face looks a little guilty. She's taking like and kind of looking at the bookstore owner. So that's just an inference I'm making. Is that the only answer you could say here? Definitely not. But that's what I'm inferring. So like I said, she looks kind of uncomfortable that the man in blue sees her receiving that package. The three people in this image would all have a different perspective on what is happening. They would each tell the story very differently. If someone were to write about what's happening in this image, they would choose who to have as the narrator based on how they wanted the story to be told. Starting with the woman, she might feel awkward or guilty for not getting her book from the bookstore. She might wish the delivery had come in another time when the man wasn't locking or unlocking the store so that he wouldn't have seen. Her perspective would give us probably the most information because she's the only person in this image who knows what's in that box. She would have a lot of feelings depending on what's in the box, depending on what her relationship is like with this bookstore owner. If the author wanted us to know what was in that box, he would probably need to have the woman telling the story if he were going to use a first-person perspective. The man in blue might know what's in the box. Maybe he can guess what's in the box. He might wonder why the woman hasn't shopped at a store for a while. Maybe she was in there recently looking for a certain book and never bought it, and so maybe he's inferring that that book is in the box. The delivery man might have no idea that the situation is awkward. He might be wondering what he'll have for lunch. He might be thinking about other things entirely. The delivery man would have the least biased perspective. He'd be able to tell the story without having strong opinions on what's going on. The woman would probably have the most biased perspective. She'd be able to give us the most detail. Let's do some practice. Oh, you don't want to practice, Tommy? It's time to say goodbye. Mr. Thomas is making his exit. You can say goodbye. Where were we? Let's do some practice. I am going to read aloud this short story. It's called The House, and it's about two boys who skip school. And I want you to keep in mind as I read that it's written in third person omniscient. So the narrator knows everything about both characters, knows what's in their mind, what they're feeling. The house. The two boys ran until they came to the driveway. "See, I told you today was good for skipping school," said Mark. "Mom is never home on Thursday," he added. Tall hedges hid the house from the road, so the pair strolled across the finely landscaped yard. "I never knew your place was so big," said Pete. "Yeah, but it's nicer now than it used to be since Dad had the new stone siding put on and added the fireplace." There were front and back doors and a side door that led to the garage, which was empty except for 3 parked 10-speed bikes. They went in the side door, Mark explaining that it was always open in case his younger sisters got home earlier than their mother. Pete wanted to see the house, so Mark started with the living room. It, like the rest of the downstairs, was newly painted. Mark turned on the stereo, the noise of which worried Pete. "Don't worry, the nearest house is a quarter-mile away," Mark shouted. Pete felt more comfortable observing that no houses could be seen in any direction beyond the huge yard. The dining room, with all the china, silver, and cut glass, was no place to play, so the boys moved into the kitchen, where they made sandwiches. Mark said they wouldn't go to the basement because it had been damp and musty ever since the new plumbing had been installed. "This is where my dad keeps his famous paintings and his coin collection," Mark said as they peered into the den. Mark bragged that he could get spending money whenever he needed it, since he'd discovered that his dad kept a lot in the desk drawer. There were 3 upstairs bedrooms. Mark showed Pete his mother's closet, which was filled with furs, and the locked box which held her jewels. His sister's room was uninteresting, except for the color TV, which Mark carried to his room. Mark bragged that the bathroom in the hall was his, since one had been added to his sister's room for their use. The big highlight in his room, though, was a leak in the ceiling where the old roof had finally rotted. What if the author changed the story so that it was told from first person? It would be very different depending on who the author decided the narrator should be. So if the narrator was Mark, his mother, or Robert, it would be a very different story in any of those situations. We would not get to hear every single detail that we just heard. Each narrator would find different details to be important, and so they would share those important details with us and leave out ones that they didn't care about quite so much or that they didn't know. Let's start with Mark's father. We're going to pay attention to details that we think Mark's father would find important enough to include in his version of the story. Let's say that he read the story and now he's deciding how to retell it using only the important details. Well, I think he'd probably care that Mark was skipping school and that he had the new stone siding put on to the house and added the fireplace. It sounds like that's something that mattered to him because he had it done, and so that's probably something he would care about. And then we also have the detail here that the side door is always open in case Mark's younger sisters got home earlier than their mother. It sounds like that's probably something that Dad would care about, that his daughters are able to get into the house. He would also care about where he keeps his famous paintings and his coin collection. If people have a collection, that usually means it's important to them. And whether he's a famous painter and he painted the famous paintings or whether he collects them, either way, those would definitely be important to him. And then we have that his dad kept a lot of money in the desk drawer. He surely would care about where he keeps his money. And lastly, he probably would care that there's a leak in the ceiling. That probably is something that he knows he needs to do something about soon. So we just went through that whole story and found the details that are most important to Mark's dad. Those are the details that he would have included in his version of the story. And now we're going to go through again and compare the details that Mark's father would have included or might have included with the details that we think a plumber might care about and might think are important enough to include in his side of the story or her side of the story. Let's call it a her. This plumber's a woman. So if the narrator was a plumber, they would know, they would share, they would care about very different details in this story. We're going to mark all of the details that we said Mark's father would care about in blue. They're already marked. They'll just still be here. And we'll add the plumber's details in yellow. I decided that there aren't really any pieces of the story that I think a plumber would care about in this section. It's about Mark coming home and hedges and siding on the house. I don't think a plumber would care. And here, this is we're talking about the bikes, the door being unlocked, living room, the stereo, houses not being very nearby. I don't think a plumber would care about those things either. We've got a dining room, china, basement, musty plumbing. Oh, plumbing. Mark said they wouldn't go to the basement because it had been damp and musty ever since the new plumbing had been installed. If this plumber had installed new pipes to get the water working the right way, and ever since then the basement has been damp and musty, she probably would care about that because that means that maybe she didn't do the best job or she needs to come back and fix something. That would be pretty important to a plumber. And here, she probably would care that there was a bathroom in the hall because bathrooms have a lot of plumbing in them. Maybe that's an area where she has worked in the past or might need to work in the future. And especially that a new bathroom had been added. This plumber probably had to help with that unless the family did it on their own. But a plumber would care about a new bathroom being added. That a new bathroom requires new pipes, new toilet, new sink, new shower maybe. And lastly, I think a plumber would care about a leak in the ceiling the same way that Mark's father cares about a leak in the ceiling. That's a detail that they probably would have in common. All the other details that we highlighted weren't in common. Some might overlap, some might not. You are going to complete a Google form to determine which pieces of information would have been included in the house if it was told from a robber's point of view, from the point of view of someone who wants to rob the house, steal things from the house. And as an extension, if you want to, it's optional, you can choose to rewrite the house to be told in first person point of view from one of the characters involved. It could be one of the ones that we mentioned. You can make up a new character and figure out what would have been important to them. But you would be rewriting the story. And if you choose to do that, you just need to upload your story onto Google Class, the assignment on Google Classroom. You'll click Add or Create, and then you'll go down to the last three options because that's where you create new things, and you'll choose a Google Doc to type up your story. Or you can put it in the comments if you want, that's fine. And I hope to see some of you during my office hours. I will not be teaching the lessons next week. It'll be back to Mr. Good, but I am trying to brainstorm ways to make the next round of lessons interesting and exciting. Some people requested more video games like Minecraft and Roblox. I don't really know yet how to do that with the unit of evidence and reasons. If you have an idea how I can incorporate exciting things to teach you about reasons and evidence and like proof of arguments, please let me know. I would love some new ideas to make the lessons exciting. Your journal entries about your life and your experiences during this pandemic are due today as well. So you will need to add or create a Google Doc to submit them. If you're doing the slides that I put into the optional category, you can just send me a link to them, or you can add them, that's fine too. And last but not least, I would love to incorporate some of your art into my lessons. So I'll be holding a contest for you to create the thumbnail for my YouTube videos each day. So it would need to have some kind of picture, and I can put the words onto it, the name of the unit and which part it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. But if you want to submit some art to be used as the background, you can just attach it to one of your assignments. And if you win, I will put it up there. So it was great talking to you. I will look forward to seeing you later. Bye. Have a great weekend. I miss you.